Welcome to Crafting with Kimberly. I'm Kimberly Keneally, and today we are going to do needle felting. And we are going to make these really silly looking pumpkins. I love the fact that they have the little tongues sticking out, the curly Q tendrils on the top. Really fun. So you can do it with a face, or you can not do it with a face. I just love adding the little faces because it really gives a fun expression to your pumpkins. But you can do, if you wanted to keep them just for having fall decor, you can see if you just turn it around, you would have just a basic pumpkin. So if you do it with a face, you could turn it around for Halloween, turn around the other side, and have pumpkin. So lots of different things that you can felt. Those are the two examples that we're going to be doing today. This is another one. I did a class that was doing Frida Kahlo. So this was her, which was really fun. Snowmen. I love snowmen. You can see how easy that is. Just a bunch of circles on some fluff. Thanksgiving is coming up, so turkey. I love gnomes. Gnomes are my absolute favorite things. So here's just a tiny little simple gnome. You can see it's just a triangle. Really cute. You can get fancy with their hats. A gnome likes to have his little mushrooms around. This is a Santa gnome that I haven't finished yet, so I'm working on that. And this is going to be Elf, and I haven't finished that one yet. And you can also, really cute, this was another class that I took, put them in a little glass jar. This is a mushroom with some moss and a stick. Look how cute that is. So lots of different things that you can make with not really a lot of supplies. It's not too bad with your supplies. And there's ways to go a little less expensively as well. With not too many supplies, it's easy to go a little less expensively too. Instead of using wool for your center, you can use polyfill. This is what you used to stuff stuffed animals and pillows with. This will work. So this you can use as your base. Fill that in, which is what this top of this one is. I made my base with the polyfill and then started to cover it with my felt colors. So that helps your felt go a long way, because felt can be, roving wool can be very expensive. They also have something called roving yarn. You can see it's a nice big thick yarn. They sell this to make arm blankets were popular. They would use this. I always hated when they told people to buy this stuff because this is roving yarn, which means it hasn't been wound into single strands, which then get wound together to plies to make your yarn. So because this hasn't been plied yet, this is going to shrink and felt. So it's going to become thick. Just like if you took a wool sweater and threw it into the hot washing machine or the dryer. That's what's going to happen. It's going to felt. So if you make a blanket out of this stuff, you're never going to be able to wash it because it will felt. So don't ever let anybody tell you to buy that. But for our purposes, you can usually find this pretty cheaply. You get a big skein, not a lot of money, and you can use this as your base or even use it as white. So this is a nice feature to have too. Today I'm going to be actually using wool. This is wool that it's called wool roving, wool that hasn't been, as I said, plied yet. We're going to be using orange. We're going to be using white as our base, a little bit of green for the tendrils, and a little bit of black for the faces. So you need your wool roving, and they sell it in tons of colors. You're going to need a type of foam block to be able to do your needle punches in it. This is a felting needle, and you can see very sharp. This is a single, and this is a multi-needle tool. I don't particularly like these as much. I thought I would because you can get a lot of surface done. So it's a good way to kind of start, but I just have a tendency to go back to a single needle. And I just, for some reason, that's what I like, and I have a lot more luck with it. But you need something because you're going to be stabbing the wool. You need something to protect your surface and protect the needle because the needles are pretty fragile. So you need something to be able to poke in where it's not going to hit. If you buy a kit online, a lot of times they'll give you, it's almost like a plasticky, you can hear the difference between that versus that. I don't really like these as much. It's what comes in the kit. It's not something I care for. So I don't usually use those. I like just this is what you usually use if you're going to upholster chairs, couch cushions, chair cushions. They sell foam like that. So blocks of foam. I like that. You could also use, if you didn't have any of those things, you could also take a towel, an old towel, and, you know, fold it up so it's nice and thick. You just don't want your needle to ever hit a hard surface. That's going to break it. But you'd have to, if you're using towel, you have to keep picking it up and making sure, because what you're doing is you're pushing your fibers into your block. So you have to keep picking it up and moving it. And especially like a towel, it's going to want to stay on that. So you'd have to just be very mindful and keep picking it up. But this is, I like the foam blocks. This is a great way to do it. So what I'm going to do, again, this is what we're making. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the camera around so you can have a close-up view of my hands and the materials so you can see how we're actually doing this. So let's start crafting. So before we get started, let me show you the needles. It's a great idea to have multiple needles on hand because they really do break easily. And they come in small, medium, large, extra large. These are medium, extra mediums. I'm actually using a small. If you have the tool, a nice thing with that is it helps you hold it. You can just hold it. This is what a needle actually looks like. So it's got the part to be connected to a tool, and then they are very sharp. And you aren't going to be able to see them, but it is not like a typical needle where it is just, you know, a single piece of metal coming down to a very fine point. It's actually a barbed needle, which means it has all sorts of little pieces of metal coming out of it, because what that does is it grabs your fibers. So as it goes in to the wool, it takes some fibers. As it comes out, it takes some fibers. And when you're the motion of going up and down, that is what's taking the fibers and connecting them into each other. So again, you can just hold the tool if you'd like, the needle, but I like using it on a tool. So you can see there is a plug. It kind of looks like a cork, and it has a line through it and comes in all sorts of different colors to hold. You can see that that's going to poke down in and it's going to hold it. So the tiny end goes down, the wider end stays up. You're going to take your needle, put it into that groove, let it catch on the bottom. So you can see right there, it's just caught on that bottom. Wide end on top, thin end on bottom, and that just fits right into your tool. Push it down so it's sturdy. That holds the needle for you, and it gives you a little bit more of a handheld. The same is true for the multiple tools. This unscrews and you can put your needles in there. And again, this is great for when you're doing a big surface and you want to just really get it going. I'll do a little bit with that so you can see it. as opposed to your little fine ones. So you basically just kind of do what is most comfortable for you. So I need to do my center. So I'm going to take my wool roving and I'm just going to kind of ball it up here and see what size I want to make. This was the very first one I made. And then you can never do two exactly the same. So the faces kind of look the same, but he was much bigger. I'm going to try to go a little bit more the little size. So I'm just going to take it and I'm going to try to just wrap it around itself. Because it's going to, when you felt, you're going to lose some of the width and bulk of it because it's going to get smaller as you're felting. So I just want to kind of wrap this around and see what size I want. I think that's a good size. You can cut your wool with scissors, but honestly, it is much better for the wool if you can pull it apart from itself. I mean, for the inside, it's really not that bad, but you can see I'm just pulling it. And the reason you don't really want to cut it is see how fluffy those ends are? That makes it much better to felt into itself. If I were to take scissors and cut that, look at the difference between straight across versus all the different fibers hanging up. So when you're working with little tiny pieces, like when we start to use our black to make the faces, you're definitely going to want to pull that. Because this is the center, I'm not too worried about it, so it's okay to cut it for that. But I wanted to show you the difference. So now we're just going to roll it upon itself. I'm just going to get it into the shape that I want it to be. And it's a pumpkin, so I kind of want to make a ovalish, roundish kind of a ball. You never know what you're going to get in your wool, because if you're buying it from a farm, even though they clean it, you still might get pieces of farm material in there from the sheep. Same thing with if you buy it online, you never know. So now I have the ball. I'm going to put it on my block. I'm going to take my needle tool and I'm going to just start stabbing. This is a great way to take any frustrations out if you've had a bad day. It's a great little thing to do. Just don't stab yourself. You might want to have Band-Aids on hand. But I like to do this while I'm watching TV, especially when you're working on the big pieces, because I really don't have to look so much as to where I'm going. I know where my needle is. I know where my hands are. I'm kind of doing like the chopping board where you take your, when you're going to cut something like meat and things like that, when you're curl your fingers in where you're holding it, so then you don't have fingers coming out where you can stab yourself. They're more curled in. So I am just poking. And it's a very relaxing thing to do. You're just going to poke all the way around. And you're just going to keep poking. And as you poke, it is going to start to shrink down into the shape I want it to be. Because I'm taking my fibers, putting it down, that connects fibers, pulling it up connects fibers. So every motion you do is connecting. And you can kind of hear it. That's what the single needle, I said I did want to show you what the multiple needle does. As you go along, this is good for big areas. That can help me go a little faster. And you just really do want constant movement. If you start felting in a single area, and I just stay in this area, you can see already how flat that's getting. It's not as loose and fluid as that. It's getting very flat. So when you look at the tongue, that's a very tightly felted piece. So are the leaves. You can see how tight those are, the strands, whereas this is a little more fluid and loose. So depending on what you're wanting it to look like, but if you want a very, very tight felt, then you stay in one area. If you want it more loose, then you're going to have to just kind of keep moving it around and around. But in the beginning, you always want to move it around and around because you have to get the pieces to felt themselves all over. So you can see, I can see where I need to go. I just want to do an all over felting before I even really think about doing a shape. I just want to get this where it all wants to stay together. And then I can start to think about, all right, how can I get the ridges of my pumpkin? There's a couple different ways you can do that. You can either do it with your needle felting tool, or if you have orange thread, you can tie thread around it and pull it in. That would give you your ridges as well. But I just want to go through all over and give it an all over felting. I've kind of gone all over. Now I want to start to say, okay, what do I want as my bottom? What do I want as my top? What shape am I seeing? What do I want? I think I'm going to probably have that be my bottom. So I'm going to go a little bit more over here. You can see this comes together very quickly. In regards to the middle, depending on how thick or tight you want your felted item to be. An example is with my gnome. It's pretty thick and tight. The nose is extremely felted. I did that a lot. Whereas with this pumpkin, I really did not do much. It's not thick. It's very, very squishy. This ended up being a little bit more thicker, so you can kind of see the difference. So it doesn't really matter. But for this, I just want to get a nice flat bottom, because this is going to be my bottom. And again, you can see if things are really sticking up a lot, like I didn't do much over here, you can tell that I didn't felt much. I do want that felted in. It will also felt more as you start putting your orange on top. Now you could just take the orange. I could have just taken this orange, rolled it all up in my shape that I wanted, and made my pumpkin this way instead of taking the time to do this step. However, colored roving is a lot more expensive than the unbleached roving. So this is pretty cheap. You can get a really big container of this for not a lot of money. So to me, save your money. That way you can get lots of different colors, but not use up so much of them, because you'll have saved your bulk by doing a different color. All right, so I have a nice shape, I think. You know, you can move it around with your hands too. And this, just so you can see it. So I've got a pretty good shape going around. Most of it has been felted, and again, as I put the orange on, it's going to felt even more. And that's how I'll be able to get my ridges. But I like I like the way that looks. So I think I'm pretty happy. That's as much of felting as I want for my base for now. I do just want to show you a little bit of the polyfill and how that looks. If you grab the polyfill that you would normally fill your pillows with, you do the same thing, get it in the shape that you want, and you start moving it around, and it's the same thing. So you will be able to get the same effect. This is going to take a little longer. You can see that it doesn't like to come together as quickly as the wool roving does, but it will still come together well. And you can see it will still give you the shapes that you need. But here's my pumpkin. Now I'm going to start to put on the orange. So I'm going to flatten out my wool roving. And I'm going to start to just set it down onto itself here. We are going to cover the entire pumpkin because you still want to be able to turn it upside down and be able to see that there's covering. So I'm just going to flatten this all out. It usually comes twisted. These are some pieces that I used in class and extras that people had, so it kind of got out of its shape. But when you get it on a roll, it comes flat. So you can see it does have other colors there that people were using, because this is stuff that we had used already. I hate to waste, so all right. So I'm just going to flatten that out a little bit. There's a lot of fuzzies on this side, so I'm going to put that on the bottom. So I'm just going to wrap this around. And you just have to kind of move it to where you think you need it, stretch it out. You can go little pieces too at a time, but since we're covering such a big area, and I've got a nice wide piece, I'm going to do that. But I want all of my ends going towards the bottom, because I'd like to keep my top and my sides as smooth as possible. So again, I'm just taking the time, smoothing that out around. If you start to see a little bit of white coming through, that's okay, because we can always put little pieces on top of that. So I'm trying to make this go as long and as far as I can get it to go. So take the time to just smooth it out, get it to where you want it. Because again, we can fill in holes, but if you can fill up most of the space without having a lot of holes showing, I'm going to actually start to remove this. So I'm going to take, you can see I'm just pulling little sections off. I'm separating it away from the big chunk that I have. I'm just pulling that away. You can see how easily it tears. Again, I'm going to go back now, make sure that I have a good amount of this covered. That's my bottom. All right, I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to just set that down, set that aside for now. I know I'm going to need more of that, but I'm just going to set it down. I'm going to start on the top and carefully just start poking. Again, I want to get an all around area covered. I'm not worrying about a shape yet. I'm not worried about my lines yet. I just want to start to get this attached. And as you see that you have spaces, you can pull that around, cover that in. I'm turning it around. It's not so important to turn it up and down until we start felting on there. That's when you really have to constantly be turning. Here is just, you want to just get it all in there. You can see it was starting to get really thin there. So I'm going to smooth that around. Just poking it all around. Getting those fibers connected. So I'm connecting now. Before I was just connecting the white fibers to themselves. Now I'm connecting the orange to the white fibers. I am kind of, to save myself some time, instead of kind of going willy-nilly as I'm poking, I am trying to keep a movement going this way, because I am eventually going to add ridges. You can see those ridges that give the pumpkin a really cute shape. So I'm kind of being mindful of that. Even though I'm going all around and not worrying too much about that, I'm still going up and down in that vertical movement. But I'm going all the way around because this whole thing has to be covered and covered well. So now I'm going to just show you, you can see how this is still loose, that I haven't gotten there yet. But you can see up here, I can't really pull that off. It's attached. So that's the idea of what we're trying to do. We're trying to get all of this orange attached to the white. Turning it around, moving it around, getting it where I need it to go. I don't want that to be so thick, so I'm going to spread that out. Because as you're pulling and moving, it can get thick in spots, so I do want to be mindful. Why waste it? Having a nice even coating. I'm going to take this, just kind of go across. When you're looking at really detailed ones, you can see this is going very quickly because it's just a ball. But when you're starting to put a lot of the details, like I did with the Frida Kahlo doll, that does take a while. And you want to be really mindful and you want to be really careful. When you're covering a big area, this is where you can just kind of not really think too much about it. Just be mindful of your fingers, but then just stab. All right, so come around there. That's my bottom. I need to make sure this side is covered. So I'm just going to pull some of this, making sure I don't pull away too much. So again, it's just a matter of time. So I'm going to speed the camera up and just keep doing this. You've seen what you have to do, so I'm just going to speed the camera up so you don't have to watch the full extent of this, but we're just smoothing, covering if we see some bare spots, moving it over, doing some more. But I want to get just this initial cover down, so now I'm going to speed this up. All right, so now I have the ball pretty much covered. And you could see, even though it was sped up, I think you saw where I pulled spots off when I had a big white spot coming off. I just pulled some of the roving and put that over the spots that I needed. I'm going to do the same right now. You can see I've got a little bit of black in there from the previous class, so I'm just going to pull some of that black off, smooth that down. I'm going to take a little bit of roving and I have some spots there, so I'm just going to smooth some of my roving down over those bare spots and add that in, and that's how you can cover it so your white doesn't show through. And that fits right in. You can see how smooth it is here. And then this was towards the end when I was folding it over. You can see how it is a little bit bumpy there. That's why I'm saying when you're going to cover it, you want to try to be as smooth as you can. Now I'm seeing some white there and some white there. So I'm going to fill those in. I'm just going to take some of my roving, put it over that spot, smooth it in, and start poking it in. And that's how you can fill it out. So you can really see that helped the orange go a long way as opposed to doing it with just the orange. So now I have my bottom covered. I have my top covered. Moving it in the shape of where I want it to be a little bit, trying to keep that pumpkin shape. So now I'm going to start to think about the ridges. I really think having ridges gives you some character. And as I said, what you could do is if you had orange thread, you could tie threads around to pull it in and give it that ridge. I'm going to just make my ridges myself. So I'm going to start up at the top, and I am just going to follow down in a line. This is where I've said before how loose the felt is around. Now what I'm doing is, because I'm going over and over in one spot, I am making that felt tighter. And when you felt tighter, it shrinks it. So you can see the line that I'm creating just by following a line and making that felt go tighter. So you can see that up close. I have a nice ridge. So there's one ridge. I'm going to decide, okay, how far apart do I want my ridges? Okay, let's go this way. When I get pumpkins, I like the stems. So I like a really curly stem. And I usually like spotted, like where it's orange and green together. I like kind of wild looking pumpkins. Not the perfectly round, smooth. I like ridges, I like bumps. Gives it character. So that's what we're doing to this little guy now. We're giving him some character. And you can see your line. So if you're not really seeing it, you know, you just have to go a little bit more. And then you just follow it up. I am not so worried about what the top is looking like, because I am going to be putting leaves and a stem in the middle. So I'm not so worried about that, because you're going to end up, if you start up at the top, it's going to end up being a depression, which you can almost already see, and that's going to be perfect to be able to put my stem in. But now you can see I have another ridge. And how quickly the ridges come together and the character that it gives it. Really fun. So I'm putting my ridges in before I'm really looking. I gave a once over to really kind of look at it to make sure that I had really no massive amounts of white showing through. You know, I turned it all around. There's a little bit of white poking through, but it wasn't completely white. If you have spots that are completely white, before you do your ridges, cover those up. But I had some that were just barely showing through a little bit, so I can go through later and fill those in. When you're doing your needle, you want to go in an up and down movement, not more than a 90-degree angle. If I have to go this way, I'm moving it, I'm turning it. So I'm trying to keep it vertical, so I'm going up and down. If you go in at a weird angle sideways, that is when your needle will have a tendency to break. And sometimes you don't even know that your needle has broken. But if you're in one area and you're going over it and over and over it, and you're not getting either to be felted this way or getting your lines, then you know your needle probably broke. So if you're not getting your results, so I'm going to go this way a little bit. I am not doing them in perfect sections. I'm doing some a little thicker, some a little thinner. Again, that gives character to your pumpkin. And you can see I'm just going up and down in the lines. I'll hold it up a little bit closer. Just following the line. So the thicker the ridge, the more time you spend in an area. So if I really want that to be a nice, thick, defined line, I'm going to spend some good amount of time of going back and forth in that same area to give my line. I'm not so concerned about the bottom because I want that to be flat, but I am continuing it down, but I'm not going as deep in the very bottom. Along the sides I am, because you'll see the sides depending on how he sits. Kind of hard to do that up in the air, but you get the you get the idea. And you have to be careful when you're felting, because you can see this is getting to be hard. If you feel it, you can feel the difference of how smooth and soft that is versus how hard a piece starts to felt. Like these leaves will feel very hard as opposed to a softer area. So you have to be very mindful with your needle there, because as it gets very hard, that can also break your needle. So you just want to be mindful of that. And you just go around as however many ridges you want, how wide you want them. But felting is fun. You can do almost anything. I did a really cute mouse as a commission piece for a friend, and that turned out really cute. And then for the mouse's whiskers, I used fishing wire, and that gave some really cute whiskers. You can add beads to these. You can felt flat. You can felt pictures, landscapes. It doesn't have to be three-dimensional. It can be on a flat piece as well. You can felt on sweaters, other pieces of clothing, tote bags. I really want them to be kind of thick around the top. Okay, I'm going to come through here. I guess even though I said I wasn't going to make them even, I did a pretty good job of making them even. I wasn't trying. But they do seem somewhat even. But the nice thing is you don't have to. It's a lot easier to not make a mistake. And when you're trying to be perfect, that's when the problems happen. You're not trying to be perfect, then you get some wonderful, like, oh, look, that's great. So I'm just going up and down with the ridges. And probably one more big one. Divide this one right in half. And you can see a little bit as I have felted this, you know, I felted the inside of the pumpkin as I'm going through. I'm felting that as well. You can see it changed shape a little bit. And it's also given me some bare spots. So once I finish these ridges, you can squeeze it into shape. So you can see the bottom and the top. You can see around the top as I went through, it did take some of that away. So I'm going to take some of my orange. That's why it's nice not to use up all of your material right away, because then you can go through. So I'm going to cover that section. Bring that on down. All right, so you can see how I have filled some of those in. I am also going to be doing, you know, some leaves. So where some of those white spots are on the top, I don't need to worry so much about that. It's a little bumpy there. I'm just going to make that my back. So I'm going to consider this my front. So I'm going to touch these ridges up a little bit. You decide where you want your face to be. All right. So I'm going to have this area right here be my face. I'm going to take some more of my orange. Pull some of that off. I'm not going to bother doing a small ball of the white and then covering it. I'm just going to take that, turn it into a round nose. I like that size. So now I'm going to be working on this. I'm going to just kind of fold it in on itself to get like an ovally kind of a nose. I'm going to hold it with my pinky, and I'm going to start to get that felted together, because what I want to do is I want to get the roundness first, and then I'll attach. Much easier that way. So you can see I do want to kind of pick it up and move it around. We're doing something smaller now, so be careful and be very mindful of your fingers. Moving it around. I want it to felt upon itself. Hold it up, because you're doing a ball, so just like we did before, you want all parts of this to felt. But with this one, because it's a nose, I kind of want it to be flat on one side and rounded on the other. So that's going to be my top. This part I do want flat. So the side that you start on will automatically try to go flat. So that's a nice way to get your flat edge. So that's relatively flat. So now I can squish it together. There's a lot of squishing and felting. Okay, so now I'm going to take my pumpkin. Again, decide this is, I want that to be the back because that's a little bumpy. I'm going to have this one be the front. Now is the time you decide, do you want his face in the middle? Do you want it in between a ridge or on the side? I think I'm going to go like right in the middle. I've got a nice space here. So I'm going to hold my nose where I want it, and I'm going to start to poke all the way through. And I'm going around the sides to start with. Spinning it around. Going around the sides, which is attaching it to my pumpkin. Going all around the sides. Haven't gone through the top part yet. I'm still going all around the sides to really make sure that's connected. And now I can go up and down a little bit to get the center connected to make sure it really is going to stay on. So now you can see I have his nose connected. So now for the mouth, I personally like a tongue going out. I think that one's really cute. So I'm going to take some more of my orange. So definitely when you're covering, make sure you have enough left over for your nose, cheeks if you want them, and your tongue. So I want him to have a little tongue. I've just folded that around. See if that's the right size. I think that's going to be the right size. So I've kind of made just like a little oval. I'm going to hold it this way. So I'm going to just start being mindful of my fingers. I'm going to start poking my oval. It's going to be wide at first, then it's going to narrow down. Now, you can see that I have basically felted that into my foam block. So that's why I say you can see as you pull it up, see those fibers pulling away? That's what's happening when you're felting. So you pick it up, you fold it over, you smooth those little bits down, and then you start again. Trying to keep my hands out of the way for you so you can see what I'm doing. So I did the one side in like an oval pattern. I'm going to pick that up again. I'm going to kind of push it up. It's a very wide oval now. So I'm going to kind of push it in half, fold it in half. Now I'm going to start to concentrate on the shape that I want. It's kind of like a capsule, a pill shape. I'm just going to keep picking it up, moving it around. Going on the sides. If you are getting a lot of fuzzies that are sticking out, what you can also do is have a little container of water nearby. Dip your fingers into that and kind of wrap it around. That'll help take the fuzziness away. You can also do that when you're all finished. You can lightly rub it with water, because there is a type of felting called wet felting. So you're using a lot of hot water and soap as you're felting. This is needle felting, so you don't need that, but you can still use the same kinds of principles to help the fuzzies go away. All right, so now I want to just set that aside and see if I like my shape, and I do. I think that's cute. First, I'm going to take some of my black, just a little bit. I want to make a mouth shape. Right underneath his nose. And I kind of want it to look like a smile and a mouth. So I'm going to set it right underneath, right where I want it. And I'm going to start to attach that. Be mindful of your shape, because remember, as you're poking in, you're changing the shape. So I'm trying to keep it kind of like a smile shape. A little pointy. You could put the tongue in and then just wrap around it. I did that with this one. I put my tongue in and then I just wrapped the black around. With this one, I actually did the mouth first, like I'm doing now, and then stuck the tongue in. I found that was just a little bit easier. All right, so now I have his mouth in. I'm going to take my tongue, decide what do I want to be the top. And I'm going to take a very, very, very thin piece of my black. I'm going to just kind of twist it upon itself. I want a line. I want a line down my tongue just to give it some definition. So I'm going to hold it like that. I've got my line down. So now I'm just going to start poking it in. Sorry if my hands are in the way, but I have to try to hold it this way. Keeping it thin, twisting it. So it's a nice thin line coming off both ends. I'm going to just hold it like that. And pulling tightly. You don't want a thick line. You want a very thin line. So almost like you're outlining it. So you can see I've just done a very thin line. I am going to continue it down the back. That holds it on. That helps you when you're putting it on. So I've continued that thin line. I'm going to continue this part. Just on that little tip right there. Again, I'm sorry my hands are in the way, but this is a little fiddle spot. So it's hard not to have my fingers in the way. I'm going to take my scissors. I'm going to cut that extra off. Connect it in. I'm going to trim that you could see a little bit of fuzziness came through. So I'm going to take my scissors again Just trim that off a little bit. Decide, all right, what do I want as the top? What do I want as the bottom? Which area looks a little better? Doing it just like the ridges. Going up and down. Giving it that nice thin line. So now I have a tongue. So you look and see which way do you want it to go in. Which way looks better? I'm going to go this way. So now I'm just going to hold that in. I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm going to hold it to where I want it to be in the mouth. And I'm going to start poking just the bottom into the mouth. So basically the tongue is sticking up towards the nose. It's right in the center of my mouth. I'm getting that poked in. So now I can bend that down. I'm going to go a little bit from the top as well. And you just keep poking until it's connected. And now my little tongue is connected. And it just gives a funny, cute little shape. Gives it some depth. I like the cheeks as well. That gives it, you know, if you didn't want a round nose, you could have made it a carrot pointed nose. But I like the roundness of the cheeks. So I'm going to take some more of my orange, and I'm going to make sure that I have, for my cheeks, I'm going to make sure that I have pretty much the same amount. Because if I have the same thickness, then my cheeks are going to be the same thickness. So I'm going to roll it up in a ball, and I'm going to put it on there to say, is that about the size that I want? Yes, that one looks good. Do the same thing over here. Roll it in a ball. Okay, so I'm going to do the exact same thing as I did for my nose. I have it rolled into a ball. I'll kind of start at the bottom because that's where my end is. And I'm just going to start poking around in a circle again. Getting it attached. Picking it up. Rounding it a bit, keeping it rounded. Going on the top. Being mindful of my fingers. Trying to get it into the shape of a ball, flattened ball. Do the same to the other one. And the reason why I'm not finishing that other one completely is because I want to have both of them at the same time, so then if I have to adjust the sizes or the width, I can. Going around in a circle. of it there. All right, so I've got one cheek. So see, you can see, that's why I didn't do them together. This one is smaller, this one is bigger. So I want to just fold that in a little bit, trying to get that more into more of an even shape with the other one. That way, if you don't put it on right away and you do them this way, you can see the sizes, and it's a lot easier to get the sizes on your foam block as opposed to actually on your piece. So now they're about the same size. So I'm going to come over to my little guy here, and I'm going to say, where do I want my cheeks to be? I want them right next to his nose. I'm going to literally be touching his nose. Holding it where I want it. And start poking, and again, poke around the sides. All around the sides. And I'm going to poke it from the middle. And now he's got a cute cheek. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Decide what side I want showing. I'm going to go here. Right up to his nose. And pretty much the same area. Trying to get where you can see. Poking around the sides. Holding it as I poke. Being mindful of my fingers. I'm doing good. I haven't poked myself yet. You'll feel it if you poke yourself. So I have some Band-Aids on hand. But to me, you're not a true crafter if you haven't burned off your fingerprints from a glue gun or poked yourself with a lot of needles. Just keep it. I don't want to flatten it out. I want to keep them like bumpy cheeks. So now you can see it's got some cheeks, cute side view, a little lower than the nose. So now let's give them some eyes. I'm going to take my black, so take a small chunk of that. I am going to cut this one in half. So I can have pretty much the same amount. Maybe thin that out even a little bit more. I'm going to just keep kind of folding it upon itself. I want squinty eyes, so I'm just going to take it. I'm going to twist it. Fold it in half again. Give a little twist. I have some water in a cup, so I'm going to just, because I didn't bring a container, I'm going to put a little water on my table right there. So I'm just going to show you that by picking up some water, look at how much more easily I can get those fibers to kind of stay together and not be so fuzzy. So there's one eye. Do the same thing, fold it back and forth, twist it together. I'm going to dip just a little bit, twist it, I'm going to fold that in half again. You basically just get it to the size that you want it to be. So now I'm going to come into my pumpkin. I'm going to start at the corner of his eye. And I mean, you can do dots if you want. I like just a squinty look. So I'm going to put my eye like that. And again, just like you did the ridges. Start poking it in. This is the fiddly part when you're going this small. So I'm starting at the nose because I want his eye to come out of his nose in that general area. So I'm going to start in there. And just kind of push it around. Get it to where you want it. Take your time on this one. So there's one eye. And I'm just kind of rolling into a tube. Starting at his nose. Now, even though I had those pretty even, this side's a little bit bigger. So I think I'm going to take just a little bit more. Just a tiny little bit more. Fold it around. Add it in the sides here. That's why if you can get it to be even the first time, it's a lot easier than having to add in. When you're doing lines, don't poke very aggressively. Start off small. Little movements, because otherwise it wants to fold in upon itself. And even though you try to do the faces the same each and every time, you just never, it's going to be different every time. Just like I don't think you could ever carve a pumpkin the same way. And now he has eyes. Squish them back a little bit. Okay, so now let's do the green stem. I want to take some of my green, fold it over, or just get to a size that you want, but I like folding it over like that. You're going to have it be pointy. I'm going to need to go a little thicker. That's not going to give me what I want. I'm going to take a little bit more. So I'm taking about that much. I'm going to fold that in half. Twist it around a bit. And I'm going to start poking, because I want this to start to connect to itself. Pick it up, twist it some more. If you keep it in a twisted position, it will keep a tube a lot easier. So remember, as I said, as you're felting, it wants to flatten. So I'm just trying to get it to connect to itself, lifting, twisting. Kind of pointing it as I go. You're making a pointed tube. So you can see how it's starting to flatten out a bit. Staying in that tube shape. You just kind of keep twisting, manipulating. I'm going to twist it a little bit more. Go around the other side here. I'm keeping this loose because I want that to be able to flatten out, and that's what we're going to attach it with. So you can see, kind of making a horn almost, but you'll see that will be its base. So I'm really just concerned about getting this top part felted, leaving this part loose. You can see taking a little bit of the water. See as I rub that around, see how all that fuzziness went away? So it's nice to have a little bit of water. Just poke where you think you need it. I do want my tip to be very pointy. So that's going to mean it's going to be a hard felt. This is a soft felt because it's not really felted so much, but the tip, I want it to be very pointy. So I'm just going to keep picking that up, moving it around, getting it to be my point, getting it to the shape that I want. Now, if you want, as you can see, this is not really felted here because I'm going to be able to now move that with my fingers. That's going to be able to be my nice big base that way. Now, if you want it to tilt a bit, to not be so straight, I can do that. I can use my block. I can bend it over. I can start to felt it a little bit that way. I'm going to keep it bent over. Go a little bit this way. So I'm kind of putting a little bit of a ridge right there. So when I pull that off, that's going to give me a little bit of a ridge. And then I can gently fold that over, poke it a bit at the edges. So then now that gives it a little bit of a tilt. I may connect that just a bit more. So now I have a little bit of a tilt. I'm going to go a little bit more on the sides here. So now I feel that's pretty good for a stem. You get it to the hardness and the thickness that you want. I want this to be a little harder felt, so I'm just kind of going around a little bit more. All right, I'm going to flatten that. Because I have all this extra, I can turn part of this into leaves. So you can see that's almost pointy there. I'm going to hold that up and I'm going to start to work that into a flat point. So that's going to give me a leaf shape. Pull it up and do the same thing on this side. I'm going to turn that more into a flat leaf shape. Turning it into a point. So now that's somewhat pointed there. Somewhat pointed there. Let's do 3. Got another space here, so I'm going to pull that out. Do a little triangle shape there as well. Go all the way around, make that pointy. Okay. Because I had so much extra, you can see I was able to take that and make those somewhat into leaves. If you didn't have enough extra, that's okay. If it was just more of a stem, you could still add leaves. But I'm going to use that. I'm going to keep the one point right there, right in the middle of his forehead. The wider ones going off to the side. And now I'm going to set that there, and I'm going to start poking in. Come around on this side, poke that down, and I'm kind of keeping the idea of a leaf shape. I'm keeping that pointed, going down the middle because a leaf has middles. basically I'm just wanting to attach it. Coming over here, this was my bigger one. Going along, making a ridge, getting that poked in. And this for me was a happy accident that I had enough left over. And I'm going to start going around the top, getting that stem really poked in from the middle. So it's connected in there. So now I have my stem put in. Now, like I said, I've done this multiple times. This one, I just had a small amount all the way around. I made leaves and added those in. This one, I just happened to have enough where it looks like leaves. So I added them in that way. I'm still going to make another leaf. Same thing with this one. I have little tiny leaves that I've added in. In fact, this little leaf is coming off, as my daughter has had this one. I had to steal it back from her. There, attach that in. So you can see that has just separate little leaves. So if you did not have enough to give it that shape, don't worry about it. Just make sure you poked in to get it in the center. So now let's make some leaves. Take an amount of green, fold it over, fold it over, fold it over. Kind of like an oval again, but we're going to make a leaf shape. So I'm going to start poking that around, and I'm really forming it on my foam block. You can see I'm just poking it to give it that pointed teardrop shape. So I'm going to form my leaf on this. I could see I'm poking it in and I'm making it a leaf shape. So keeping it rounded towards the bottom, pointed towards the top. I'm not worrying about picking it up yet. I just really want to get that solid, thick leaf shape. I will be able to pick it up off the foam board. It looks like it's going right into it. You can see, but I'm still going to be able to pull that up and off. So I'm going to fold that over. I'm going to gently go on the bottom. Because now I don't want to, it's already got my shape. I don't want to go into that foam block too much because this is going to be the bottom. But I still need to felt this part of it, get those fuzzies away. Turn it over. Do some more on the top. Make it more pointy. Working on the top again. To put a little bit of that water again. want this to be even pointier. I'm just going to kind of turn it on its side, work a little bit on the side. You just have to keep moving it around until you get the shapes that you want. I want this, you know, three-dimensional. So that's why I'm kind of working on top, bottom, sides all at once into a point, turning it as I go. And I want to put, just like I did the ridges on the pumpkin, I want to do a ridge down the center of my leaf. Make it really look like a leaf. And I'm not doing it on the pumpkin because I want it to be 3D. I want it to stand out. So now I have a leaf. I'm going to come over to my pumpkin. I need a little something in the back here. So I'm going to take it, hold it where I want it. I'm going to attach the back here. But I want it to staying up. So now I have a leaf. To do the tendrils, I'm going to take a chunk. I'm going to fold that in half and then twist. And I'm going to do a pretty tight twist. And as I've twisted it, I'm going to hold it down on my form. Be careful of my needle because this is a pretty thick twist. And I'm going to go all the way down. Because I want to make sure that I can felt it while it's twisted. And then when you need to clean your foam block off, you can just gently with your fingers pull that off. Another good way, take some water, gently go back and forth. It's a good thing to do to clean it off before you change colors so you don't get your colors mixed in. All right, so again, I'm going to keep twisting. I keep wanting it twisted. This is the fussy part, so this is where it's going to take some time. We just keep twisting. You just want a nice, long, twisted tube. These you want really pretty well felted. You don't want this loose and soft like the pumpkin itself or even the stem. You want it felted tightly. And again, this is where you're going to have to just keep twisting it. lifting and twisting. Because this is your detail part. So you really want these to be nice and thick. Again, sorry that my hand is in the way. Come down because I didn't get a lot down towards my edges because that's where I was holding. So again, I like taking kind of the fuzziness away with the water. Then you also know where you need, if you get a little bit of water on there, then you also know where you need to twist it a bit more to get it felted. You'll feel what's felted, what isn't. Because these will start to feel thick and hard. All right, so now I have a tendril. I have a wider area there, which is fine because I'm going to just, when I go to attach it, twist it, put it where I want it, start to poke it in near the stem. Follow it along, make sure it's really connected in there well. And now that's in there. So now is where you get to play. Because you've made a rope, you can twist it and make it curly Q. I think I'll spin it a little bit like that. Give a quick little tack. I'm going to put my finger underneath there to hold it. So I've just tacked that little part down. So that's a little, you can see I'm doing this part of it. I'm going to twist it and then decide where else do I want a little curly Q to be. I think I'm going to tack it, curl it around there. Tack it in right there. So now you have a cute little tendril that really gives a lot of character to your pumpkin. You have your leaf, you have your tendril. You can put on as many tendrils or leaves as you would like. Here, I usually do things in threes. So here are 3 leaves, and I've got 2 tendrils. This one, I have 3 tendrils and 2 leaves. So you can make them, you know, as full as you want. And the nice thing is if you don't like something that you've done, if it's not working out well, even though you felted that in, I could pick this eye right out. I could pull it out and then redo it. So if there are parts that you don't like, that it didn't work out, you could pull the nose off, pull the cheeks off, pull the little eyes. So any of these little details that you don't like, you can fix. And you can go through, fix in little details. If that mouth isn't pointy enough, you know, you can do what you need to do. So you can see with just a little bit of work, what cute items that you can make. You can do these for all the different holidays. If you collect snowmen, if you collect gnomes, whatever you like to make, it's really not that hard to turn them into little felted objects. So I hope you had fun. I'll see you next time. This is Kimberly Kennelly, Crafting with Kimberly. Bye.